couple of days ago, I was speaking to an associate of mine, and she was concurrently in the process of babysitting. Now, multiple times on this channel, I've talked about how I think there is a gender disparity in terms of what behaviors we expect a male or a female to engage in. She had to watch several children. One of them was a 9 year old that over the course of me being able to hear this back and forth between them and just what was going on in that household, I heard this child scream at her. I heard this child curse her out. I heard this child actually, and she confirmed this, assault her. Yeah, Blaze, this is autobiography time. Well, again, it's something that someone else experienced that I was privy to and actually was technically there for, so it goes along with that. Now, these are behavior patterns I think people would find disagreeable. They would say, it's not good for some small child to attack their babysitter and act disrespectful toward them. I told her this, and her response was that the child had mental illnesses or autism or something to that effect. Now, I have no way of confirming if this kid did have some kind of mental illness. My problem is this: whatever, and Ablaze, we're trying to actually speak about this. Let me get out my monologue before we digress. My issue comes from the fact that in hearing this dialogue, whether or not you want to say the kid had mental illnesses, she still was cognizant of what she was doing. She knew she was being told she couldn't do something that she wanted to do. So her response was to act in a manner that she knew would elicit a negative or a reaction from her babysitter. And Lamar, that is something that will be discussed tomorrow. It's just wait a day. I made something earlier. I'll make some tomorrow. It's stick around if you want to. Don't. I've tried to talk about as much as I can, but I want to speak about something else. I thank Mr. Fillmore for saying that. So her various rebuttals to what I was saying was that she wasn't telling the parent about how this kid was acting because the customer is always right. That was her quote. And my response or rebuttal to that was, you're not getting paid by these kids to watch them. You're not. They are not the ones who are subsidizing. You're having the parent pay you to watch these children. I don't think being paid to watch kids should entail having to teach them how to just act in a normal manner. And it's not some kind of thing where all the children are bad. The other two were very complacent with whatever request she had. Now, in the course of seeing her interactions or overhearing them, I heard her try to bargain. Oh, I'll take you here if you, don't act this way. The kid still refused. And I explained to her, based off of what I've seen in just growing up, the best punishment, because her thing was, and this is something I hate, she said, oh, well, I don't want to put my hands on this child. Well, it shouldn't go from, I don't want to touch them, so I'm going to let them do whatever they want or try to appease them. My reaction in the case of if I'm not permitted to put my hands on one, which I wouldn't do in the first place, but if that's the case, or you're trying to avoid physical confrontation, you give them ultimatums that are geared toward telling them or showing them that they are not capable of shifting your own agenda. So, for example, if you tell this child to sit down and they say no, then tell them, okay, we'll sit down, but this time no TV, no speaking. If you talk, I'm calling your parents. I'm notifying them of what you're doing. Really make it to where what you want them to do is the simple, easy way out of having any trouble. Yeah, Envoy, what sparked this is that I sat there for days and overheard a child that was 9 years old, was very, in my opinion, very rude, assaulted the babysitter who I was on the phone with, and acted in a manner that I didn't think was befitting for someone of that age. Now, one of her other responses the babysitter was trying to defend the way this child acted, and her whole stance was that, oh well, this is not my kid, and I was giving her various ways in which she could get around having that supposed handicap. But the gender part of this comes into this because I posed this question to her. If I, as a male, allow children, especially ones that are not my own, to talk to me in a manner that is disrespectful, to try to bargain with them, oh, if you just do this for me, we'll go and do this. If you just do this for me, I'll give you whatever. I would be seen as weak. I'd be viewed as ineffective. I would be looked at as a pushover. These are all perceptions that I can tell the four of you who are sitting up in this chat room would have of me if you saw me acting in the manner that she did. And her response to me saying that, you would view me as being these things was, oh, no, I would think you were patient. And that's not true because if that were the case, you would. So this person, their view of just from what I've seen of them, I can't buy that. I'm sure that to me strikes me as an idolized version of what one would believe. So for example, if I tell you that, oh yes, if some female comes around and she's just, so attractive to me in terms of her personality, it doesn't matter what she looks like. We all know that's a lie. It's personality will definitely be a factor, but other things apply as well. I'm just saying it's an idolized version. If I tell you that, I'm giving you an idolized version of what is going on. Okay, Brought Vulture asked a million questions. How close is the babysitter in the family? The babysitter is a family friend. Does the babysitter really need the money? I would wager no. Actually, I would confirm no. The babysitter, full disclosure, is not living paycheck to paycheck. So they can spare not going to that. But on this mental illness thing, because I've noticed this is a running thing. And the problem I have is that I've been to school and met multiple people with, actual confirmed illnesses, and they don't act this way. Oh, Envoy, yes, that was the point I was trying to make to her. Sadly, this could lead to the kid being undisciplined as he/she gets older. I want you to picture this. 10 years go by. This kid has the same babysitter up until they become, teenage or adult, whatever. The babysitter, just keeps taking the abuse, getting smacked up. This kid told her to shut her mouth. They continue to do that for another decade. This kid then becomes in 10 years be 19, my age. Thinks that they can get away with anything as they have grown up and had a babysitter and parents that make excuses for them. Whether or not this child has a mental illness, she still was not mentally impaired enough to not know that what she was doing was getting a reaction out of the person who was watching her. And look, I'm sorry, but every person I've met that goes and insults someone and has those type of disabilities knows right from wrong. And if I'm really supposed to believe that we can assist people who have this affliction, why would I give them a special exemption? Just remember, this child is not 3 or 4 or 2. They're not, some innocent little baby that just came out of, the oven a couple of years ago. Okay, Turner asks, where I'm guessing, where are the parents' reaction to this? That's another good question. This person, remember, was assaulted by this child. I asked her, did you tell the parents? I forgot. So again, and also has admitted to me that she has never asked rather, permission to whoop this kid. And, obviously has stated she doesn't want to do that. Then when given alternatives on what to do, chose not to implement them. Now, I don't know how this kid interacts with their own parents. I don't know how they react with, the members of their family aside from the siblings that they were putting their hands on and attacking during the course of this, not to attack and just harassing and bothering, but over the course of this dialogue, the time I was on the phone with their babysitter. But let's pretend that she does treat her this child, just treat her parents, with respect and all of that. That means she knows that who she can do this to and who she can't do that to. Okay, and then Envoy says mental illness. Yeah, that's what I was told, that this child is mental illness. Okay, and then Envoy says I plan on being the type of father who has a fun, open relation with his child, is extremely friendly, but if you cross the line, heads will roll. Yeah, well, here's my thing. You don't have to hit your kid to be a good parent. You have to lay down ground rules. You have to give some type of ultimatum that is, again, befitting to what you want to do. You're in control. You pay the bills. And even if you didn't pay the bills as she did in that situation, she still was the person that was designated as being in control. Really, think of which one works better. Oh, this kid is screaming and yelling and cursing. Oh, please do this for me, and I'll take you to, I'll buy you the new Xbox game. Versus, hey, you can keep screaming and yelling. I'm gonna call your parent and have them either whoop you when they get home or give some kind of punishment toward you, or ask them permission to do it. These are, you can't allow these kids to dictate how things flow. And even as I tried to say something over the course of, okay, here's this. Envoy says, I agree, but you don't have to hit your child. I agree with that as well. I'm 24. My parents have an African background, so beating was, okay, fun. Yeah, I understand your perspective. What I'm saying here is that her stance was one of not wanting to put your hands on anybody, or at least assault or whatever. Even in having that stance, there's still other things you can do than just sit there and beg and moan. And like I said at the start of this, I fundamentally believe there is a gender gap in between, or disparity in genders, when it comes to how they're supposed to react to these children. If I were in that situation, I as a male, and I don't know, let's say I recorded that and I was going, please, 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 please do this for me, please. Every one of you would think I was weak. I was ineffective. I was a lapdog. I couldn't stand my own ground. What would your opinion be if you just saw me go begging this 9-year-old child to do these things for me in exchange for some reward? What would the reaction be? I want to see what somebody write some stuff in the chat room. I want to know. Exactly, Turner. That's the point I'm making. When I saw her doing that, this person who is an adult by no stretch of the imagination is a child. I put my hands on my face into this regard. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked because I couldn't. It doesn't make sense to me how someone that old, or someone who seemingly knows how to go and say hello to ALU. Thanks for throwing me off. How someone can just allow that child to act that way toward them and offer up excuses. Oh, they have a mental illness. Which, even if that's the case, they were mentally competent enough to know what words are bad and what words aren't bad. Talking about shut up, shut your mouth. And that's kind of the thing, the problem I have with many of the, I guess, relationships I've seen between children and parents, and that's it more so has to do with just children and adults in general. How things are handled, how situations are managed. Envoy says, yeah, there's a means of disciplining without hitting them, but I ask you a personal question. Do you think some children only respond to beatings? I think it should go like this, Envoy. You have to understand, we live in a world now that you can't put your hands on anybody. And even if you do it on your own kids, there's still sanctions against that that weren't in place years ago. If you try to reason with the child, you give them it's the equivalent of almost a meter. Let's say that you're at the top. Hey, please do this for me. Stop acting this way, and you won't have any punishment. Again, you're not giving them any rewards for doing this. The reward is you'll stay what you are. You won't get any punishment. They say no. You drop a little further down. You say, okay, well, if you don't do what I want you to do, then you're no TV, no fun, no entertainment. You take all of it away, and they still don't do what you want them to do, and you're the parent. Okay, well now, with all their stuff taken away, which I would think this is usually what does it. But if you go further down, what else is left but a beating, or a whooping, or whichever term you would use for that? You've gone from trying to give them the ultimatum of just stop now and you'll be fine, to then, okay, well, we're going to take all your stuff away or give you some punishment, to then, okay, well, now physical ailment or just something of that sort. What else is left? They literally squandered all other opportunities for them. You've given them punishments that didn't work. You tried to give them a pass there, and they still just won't bother. So I think it's on. I hope that answered your question. I'm just so bothered by the idea that you have this kid that's sitting up wherever they live, and the other ones act good or nice or whatever, and now you have, in 10 years or a decade or whatever, you're gonna have her walking down the street telling people to shut their mouths. And I wonder what the reaction is going to be to whoever she says that when she's not in that controlled environment of, oh, this is a family friend, so she's gonna put up with it. Okay, Broad Vulture says, I think in terms of power play, kids either see you serious or fun. Seriousness makes them fear you because you are unpredictable. At the same time, they respect you. Yeah, well, I've seen instructors throughout my schooling who were able to play a serious role while also still having some fun. They had a thing where there's it's almost a craft in the sense where they would act out or maybe try to get the teacher's attention. Teacher would say, "Hey, look, we're not having that. You get a punishment for this. Bye bye." And then teacher just generally being in a good mood aside from that. So you have to. It really is. It's supposed to be a quick turn off. You go out of your fun mode to just serious. Hey, we're not doing that. And you have. It's not hard to do this. I don't get why that she was just ugh. Bravo says in terms of fun, they see you as equal and are able to do whatever. In this case, take advantage. Lamar, I know it's not the real Kendrick. He says if a butt whooping was a cure, then all we would need is one and be good for a lifetime. No, I don't think it's a cure. I think people sometimes just don't get the incentive until they experience the punishment. And even in getting the punishment, sometimes people don't care for the to stop it. You've had those who've been to prison that will go back and commit crimes. You've had those that come out and are reformed. Who are you referring to? Oh, okay. You guys are going back and forth with each other. But my point is that I'm not saying one size fits all, but when you have a series of just repeated missteps by the way of what she was doing, at least I don't know how the parents do it, but whatever they're doing isn't working. You have to realize it's not going into effect. Maybe the parents are doing it enough, possibly to where this child doesn't act that way toward them. I don't know. I do know that this child knows they can speak to friends of the family, people that are closely affiliated with outside of the family, in a manner that is rude, and put their hands on them. Forget just words. We're talking actually assaulted this babysitter. And these are the kind of things that are allowed because, well, the person isn't of legal age to do anything against, and there's no incentive to try and teach them anything. It's just and then the babysitter themselves covers up for the kid by not saying anything to the parents. Oh, then you give the babysitter alternatives, they ignore you. Okay, what else is here? So, I would like to just issue my heartfelt apology for those who are so into wanting net neutrality again. We'll have that tomorrow, definitely. Envoy says, I would say something like boot camp, a type of institution. It's extreme, but they get to the teenage and are still. I can't see another option. Well, that's the thing. You have to understand something, Envoy. And I think you probably do, but let me just spell this out. 9 years old might seem like, oh, that's a child. But think about this, and I'm not saying it isn't, but I am saying that it's not. That's halfway to being 18. I don't know what other way to spin that. And I guess what I'm trying to convey here is that you're no longer a decade away, and just you have to, at that point, certain things just should be learned. How not to go out of the house with no clothes on, not to curse somebody out that you don't know. Just things that, especially some teacher or some authority figure. This is what is just so aggravating about noticing this type of behavior, because you feel, and it's not people, a lot of times people will say, oh well, we that get upset with how someone else acts are supposedly upset because they get away with something we weren't able to get away with, and there is maybe merit to that. I know that when I was 9, I didn't act that way. um, but even in the absence of us not being able to get away with this, it's still something that's bad, and it's horrible for two reasons. One is that the child acts that way. The second is that the child is allowed to act that way. I refuse to believe that all these adults around it just don't have any possible way of diverting it from acting in this manner. If anything, all they've done is enable this manner by making excuses for it, as in the case with that babysitter. And this is allowed to fester and grow, and then people wonder when someone ends up getting for example, they have these kids that fight each other and end up disappearing for days or getting killed. It's over not knowing how to manage and handle these situations where you're up and encountering someone who's not a person you would immediately trust. I'm sorry, but if you're not, my brother or my sister, I'm not going to think it's okay to just rough around with you, especially not some babysitter that you're not related to. And there's no attempt to control this, to quarantine it, to just do anything to quell it. And that's the biggest issue to take away from this, other than the fact that it is scary to think there are parents of this nature who, by all accounts, are enabling this. Okay, I don't know if it has both. I heard about a mother. I'd have to actually get back to you on that case, or in that case. I think it does. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does, but I'll have to clarify later on. But again, even if it didn't, it's still not some orphan. I'm just saying it has multiple male figures that are around. Just there are enough adults here that have just basic understanding of how to act as human beings that should be able to steer this kid in the right direction if they wanted to. I don't think they want to, and that's why it's not happening. So, that's my argument, my opinion. And I'm bothered by those two aspects more than anything else. It's just scary to think that that is allowed to exist. But it also touches two issues: how to manage kids that act this way, and also the gender gap. I truly believe that if this babysitter were a male, she'd be seen as weak, or rather, he'd be seen as weak. He'd be seen as ineffective. He'd be called a wimp. All these different terms that we apply to males that do not exude the levels of authority that we figure they need to have. And I'm not going to go and say that female privilege, but I think this is an area where there's more of a sense of willingness to give, not even alpha male ALU. It's more so just not allowing people to have various versions of ways of managing children and not have the same perception. For example, it's kind of like how if a female has multiple male partners that are known, she'll get called promiscuous. But if a guy has multiple female partners, he gets called, the ladies' man. It's one of those things where if the same type of behavior is exuded by both genders, there are very different connotations made toward that. So I think it's something to that effect. But yeah, that was my piece on this. I'll have something else up on net neutrality. I was just bugged by this situation. It just bothers me that people will know that what they're doing is wrong and then make these excuses for it. And then the people who act messed up, or even worse, actually, get to fester and grow and turn into menaces to society. Because, again, imagine for 10 years no one tells her, hey, you can't put your hands on this person. Hey, you can't curse this person out that you don't know. that does not bode well for her, and does not bode well for the rest of the world in her immediate capacity. And it's not to say that someone is forever doomed, but this is, there are indicators that I think are more noticeable than others, and this is one of them definitely.